I'm ready. I don't know how that clock ends up off like that. That's gonna mess me up one day.
Let's look over there.
Ah, got it. Nobody online. And you guys were trying to adjust the camera and I went over in there. I started moving it. Turns out it's all electronic. Yeah, oops. Okay. Waiting for recording though. Doesn't it normally say recording? Okay. Well, we're on. We're live. Yeah, hot mic. Here we go. All right, welcome. Good morning. I'm going to open this formal session of the Board of Commissioners at 10:02 on January 23rd. Ken, you want to lead us in the flag salute? Thank you for that. Okay. As we get going this morning, it'll be the same as every other Thursday. If you got any comments, fill out the comment cards that are on the black pedestal in the back of the room. Tan ones are for agenda items. Green ones are for public hearings, which we do not have. We do not have a public hearing today. So you'll be filling out the tan cards. If you have comments that are not on an agenda item, you'll be called up here shortly. If you do have a comment on an item that is a comment on an agenda item, wait for that agenda item to come up and then raise your hand. We'll prompt you to come up. If you're on Zoom, raise your virtual hand when the item comes up. We can knock 2 minutes off of the meeting if we just cut that out of there. I mean, everybody's got to know it by now.
I like your style.
Yeah. Okay, we're on item C, calendar session. Do we need to, does anybody have anything to add to the joint calendar? Update, remove anything? Okay. Moving on. Item D is public comment period. Does anybody have a comment on anything that's not on the agenda? Raise your hand or raise your virtual hand. Not seeing any. Moving on. Department updates is E. We have none today. F is work session. We have no work sessions today. G is consent agenda. Looks like we have some reappointments with the Fair Board. We have John Nyberg, Leslie Lewis, and Greg Wildhover for the Fair Board. We have Leslie Anderson, who will fill one of the empty spots on the Parks Board. And we have some surplus vehicles with Parks Department.
I'll move
Anybody
approval, Chair.
move approval? There's no further discussion.
None for me.
Okay. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. All those opposed signify by saying nay. Motion passes. Thank you. Moving on to item H. We do have a comment card filled out for item H1. Michael Gunn, would you like to come up? State your name and address.
Morning, Commissioners. My name is Michael Gunn. I represent David and Roberta Charlton. They're the two people on the end of the first row there. They're the owners of 13905 Northeast Quarry Road. So if the tax lot is R30, there are two tax lots, R3215, 00100 and 00300. The lady to their left is my legal assistant, Kathy Walker, who has done a lot of the research associated with this matter to get us to where we are. Now, may I ask, are Mr. and Mrs. Mashofsky, did they sign up to appear via Zoom today? Do you know? No.
Well, they'd be logged in online and they'd have to be prompted, and I do not see them there, and they're always.
That comes as somewhat of a surprise to me. The purpose of this meeting, as I understand it, because when we were here on 2 weeks ago, I represented to you that we did not have an agreement on the easement at that point in time. I also represented that Lee McDonald had, the night before, had got me information on a survey work that he had done. He had started about 2 weeks before that, and to everyone's surprise, the road was totally within the county property, which is 3215 AA 00400. That's the subject of this whole matter right here. So with your permission, what I would like to do is to tell you where we are right now. And also, I've taken the liberty, you already have PDF files that I submitted on the 6th of January. Well, they weren't PDFs. Then Christian copied them because my PDFs were too big to send email. On the 6th, it was a plethora. There was 59 pages of documents. Then I submitted a supplemental memorandum on the 17th that had 3 documents there. Now, I've taken the liberty to give you already have these PDF, but I think if you juxtapose these 2 maps in front of you, you can get a better understanding rather than having to look at your PDF files as to what the relationship of all these. And if you look at the aerial, which is the GIS map, this one right here, this is through an app called ORMAP, and it is supposed to overlay the property lines of tax lots where they are as far as the assessors have them placed. Now, when we started this whole matter, which was back in either September or October, when I first approached Christian, the problem was that Charlton's property, which is down here, 00100 and 00300, excuse me, 00300, has a road, an access road that starts somewhere around the southeast corner of their property and meanders east to Quarry Road, where Quarry Road comes in off Highway 99W. Now, as you can see, there's an existing, used to be called Southern Pacific, that's been changed. There's a railroad that's been, the usage of that's been abandoned probably at least 10 years ago, but there's a railroad right-of-way that goes east and west along basically parallel to 99W, and then takes an extreme northwest loop curve up towards the north end of Newburgh. Charlton's property, that road kind of, and I want to emphasize kind of, parallels that railroad right away. And if you look at this GIS map, and this is what everybody thought was where this road was, okay? This map has this road. When you look at the county parcel, which is this little, you juxtapose, you look at your map here that I have color coded. Actually, my assistant did that. The green portion of this map survey that Lee McDonald did, that I'm holding, the green portion outlined is the county property. And it was created via a whole bunch of sales of portions of Tract 13 of the Chehalem Mountain Orchards that was platted in 1912. What was left over of what was sold, okay, at Tract 13. That's what's left over. And it was owned by a person named Shad in the early 80s, and it was tax foreclosed for $23 by the county. He probably didn't even know it that he owned it at that point in time, I'm supposing. But that's the property we're talking about. And as you can see, it's very hard to see it on this aerial, but it's right below where the label says Yamhill County parcel 00400. And nowhere, and when I first called Christian, he said, and I approached him about an easement, he said, well, he's looking at the map, he said, well, the road isn't even on the county property. So that's what everybody thought, and we didn't want to spend a bunch of money. We were trying to do it the cheapest possible way to get Charlton's a legal access. And that didn't happen. We were not able to reach any kind of an agreement. At the time, we thought we had to get an easement from Hoy. We had to get an easement from the county. It turns out we don't have to get an easement from Hoy. As you can see this map right here, the survey from McDonald. You can see the orange is that's where the road is. That road is totally within the county property up in the northeast end before it gets to Quarry Road. And that road comes down and comes into the 60-foot easement on Hoy's property somewhat, and then eventually gets to Charlton's. But you can see these dotted lines right here, which are the south end of Hoy's property. And then these dotted lines go northwest along the east line of Charlton's. Then if you would look at this map at the same time, then they go west along the north line of Charlton's. They're all on Hoy's property. Those are 60-foot wide ingress, egress easements. No question is, everybody agrees, even Hoy's, that those easements are ingress, egress. They were created in 1978 when part of that property was sold to Johnston. So what Charlton's need is this road. The house is down in here on 00100. According to the assessor, that house was built in 1920. Okay. In 1950, all of this property here, which is 00100 and 00300, Charlton's 0304, which is Hoy's. Hoy's now partitioned the northeast corner and sold part of it, and 00303, which is Caffels, totaled about 50 acres. It was owned by Margaret and Bill Hayes. They bought it in 1950. They also owned property up here that they later sold to Meisel and others. They owned it. They owned it when the house was there. That road was there when Hayes owned it. That road has been an access road from that parcel to Quarry Road probably since 1920. I have no idea if it was then. There's a pretty strong inference it was. Clearly, since 1950, that road has been an access road. Everybody has treated that road as being an easement to get to Charlton's property from Quarry Road. The problem is, as I set forth my two prior occasions, Charlton's, Mr. and Mrs. Charlton are retired. They want to sell the property. They had it listed for sale, had to drop the price. They had an accepted offer on that property last year. At the last minute, the buyer evidently went to a realtor or an attorney, whatever, said to the title company, who was First American Title, we want you to ensure access to this property on your title policy. The title company will hardly ever do that. They charge an endorsement. It's a 17.1 and a 17.06 endorsement. They look at all the recorded documents, and all of a sudden they say, well, wait a minute. There's no recorded easement from southeast corner of Hoy's, which is right at the southwest corner of county. There's no recorded easement there. The deed just says an access road that travels, basically I'm paraphrasing, the Quarry Road. So without a recorded easement, title company's not going to insure it. That deal fell apart. They can't sell that property because now they got to disclose to a new buyer. They don't have a recorded easement. That's where we're at now. So here's what they need. You have accepted a bid from Hoy's. I'm really surprised they're not here, but that's beside the point. I have Teresa Mashofsky, who is the trustee of the Geneva Hoy Trust. I have a you have it in your file, a signature of hers on page 3 of the proposed easement, agreeing to the terms of that easement, which were far different than what we started out with, they wanted, but at any rate, if you look at the map, the access to Charlton's property is via the Orange Road, okay? The county planning department requires a 30-foot wide easement. Lee McDonald has delineated that on this map. Exhibit A to that easement, which is in your packet of the material I submitted on January 17th, has a legal description. Christian tells me that it was obviously contingent on county surveyor approving it. Christian tells me that evidently there was a Scrivener's error. I talked to McDonald a couple days ago. He didn't mention anything about that. I have to find out about that. If there's a Scrivener's error, has to be corrected on that legal for that easement. That's got to be corrected. But at any rate, this is the location of the easement right here. This is what you would be granting. You've accepted the bid of Machowski on behalf of the Geneva Hoy Trust. They have approved the easement. You would be granting, or you would be granting the easement, which was a contingency on your acceptance. You have accepted the bid contingent on the parties agreeing on an easement. By her signature on behalf of the Geneva Hoy Trust, they have agreed to that easement. So to get to Charlton's property legally, you would use this easement right here, which is defined in the yellow. There's a north-south. This is part of the old Chehalem Orchards or Mountain Orchard subdivision. There's a 20-foot wide platted county road. It's never been built, probably never will, don't know, probably never will, but it's legally a right-of-way right now, okay? Open to the public. They have the right to go over that from this easement, and then they get into that 60-foot easement of Hoy's. So you chain all 3 of them together, and assuming you grant the easement, which we're urging you to do, they will then have the legal right to go from Quarry Road, where you come off of 99W onto Quarry Road, make an extreme left, go westerly, over the easement, over the county property, the 20-foot right of way, then they're into Hoy's property. I've submitted the supplemental documents. I reference some legal issues associated with this, which are certainly not meant to be threatening in any manner or whatever. They're meant to make a record. I've discussed them with Christian. There's a legal concept called a prescriptive easement. I pretty firmly believe, along with counsel for the title company, that they have acquired a prescriptive easement over this property. Problem is, you have to file legal action. Nobody certainly wants to do that. But at any rate, that's why it would be best for everybody if you simply just grant this easement over the property, prepare a quitclaim deed for the county property. There's a legal in the easement that I obtained from the title company, approved by Lee McDonald, presumably approved by county surveyor, that would go with the quitclaim deed to Geneva Hoy Trust. So you would record the easement. 1 second, 10 seconds immediately thereafter, the quitclaim deed would be recorded for the 16,000, whatever, 116, I think, whatever the price was. And we would have our legal easement over that property. There's a clause in there dealing with the maintenance. It defers to the statutes. It's 115. I cite the statutes in there. It's basically a usage formula as far as who pays the maintenance and repairs. Initially, it would be the owner of Charleston's property. They're the only ones that would be using it. So I hope that explains everything. This has turned out to be way more complicated than anybody ever imagined to start out with. But we're asking you to, you've already accepted it, so I'm here telling you, based on Teresa Mashofsky's signature, that she is approved the language on that easement. So the only thing that remains, I think, is for me to contact Lee McDonald, then get back to Christian as far as if there is an issue on a Scrivener's error on the legal description on that easement.
Yeah, Mike, I looked at my communication. I don't think there's an error on the description of the easement. It
Oh,
looked like
okay.
he might have had a comment on one of the legal descriptions for one of the parcels. Previously, remember that the easement was going to grant rights to several parcels. But now it's down to just.
Now it's down to just
it's like a
Charlton.
parcel. So I don't believe there's
Okay.
any kind of
Okay,
an
good.
error that we need to be concerned about in deciding
Okay,
this
good.
morning whether or not to move forward. with
What
the
he's
easement.
referencing, if I may, the contract from Johnston to Cathell was the first. Johnston partitioned that property into 3 parcels in 1977. He took that 50 acres and partitioned it into 3 parcels. Cathell was the first one that was sold in was January of 1978. That's the contract that has these 3 60-foot wide easements in it. Hoy was sold, I believe, in November or October. It was 78. References that, puts these easements on there, and then Charlton's was sold in 78, December of 78. Was sold to Bowden. Yes, Commissioner Starrett?
No, I was just going to
I'm
say, I
sorry.
think, what is before us today is really addressing the the easement, and I would look to Christian for wording for a motion, unless, I think we've kind of gone
Okay.
over this, and I think really it begs the question of us making that determination, and we have had an accepted, we have accepted the Hoy's offer. So if you've worked out the differences and we do have wording for a motion, I'm just wondering, Chair, if that would be agreeable?
I do. I think this is pretty simple for our side. Appreciate the comments that you've made on it. We're going to defer to Christian to give us the thumbs up that the terms of the agreement have been met between the Charltons and the Hoys. And as soon as we get that from Christian, we'll make a motion and keep her moving.
Yeah, I mean, if you don't have any other questions for Mike, as he said, it certainly appears as though the parties have reached agreement.
Yep.
We've been circulating copies of the draft. Mike's provided you a copy of that draft with the Hoy signature. So as far as I can tell, and from everything Mike tells me, they are in agreement. So what's before the board, as you said, would be the final acceptance of the previous bid from the Geneva Hoy Trust in the amount of $16,119, and then instructions to staff to go ahead and proceed with the sale.
So we'll just do a so moved on that.
So moved.
Any other, and are you,
I'm out.
okay. No further discussion, so I'll call for a vote. Everybody in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Are you, anybody recusing themselves?
Yes, aye.
And then all those opposed signify by saying nay. Motion passes. Thank you.
I have a question, if I may,
Thank you.
for Mr. Burnish. As far as the procedure is concerned here, they have to submit the remaining 90% within 10 days, isn't it?
Correct. I was going to follow up and explain that as well. Yes, the Hoys have 10 business days to submit the balance
Sure.
of the bid. And then once that's received, we'll prepare a board order that will look very much like the board order that was prepared several years ago when we sold a similar parcel that we had granted an easement on previous. So if we were to get that money in time, this could come back before the board as soon as next week. Otherwise, I expect it would be the following week.
Perfect. All right.
you.
Appreciate it. Thank you, Michael.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right, we're moving on to other business under I. I1 is consideration approval of a grant agreement number 184213 between Yamhill County and the Oregon Health Authority for the Nurse Family Partnership Program in the amount of $447,720, retroactive to September 30th, 2024 through September 29th, 2025.
Chair, this is our home visiting program for first-time or at-risk parents, and I would move approval.
We have a motion. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed signify by saying nay. Motion passes. Thank you. As announced in the beginning, there is no public hearing, so Jay is,
Chair, before
Oh.
you move on, you have an add-on item?
I wrote that down on the beginning and so I passed over it. So we do have a walk-on, so we have the liaison list back before us again. Let me grab them here. So what happened was when we were polling, when Commissioner King requested public safety, we transferred all of public safety, and then Commissioner King was okay transferring planning and back to my list. Well, connected to planning is soil and water and DLCD. And
Okay.
so those two came back to my list with planning. And then also there was some just clerical stuff for LIPSIC that said non-voting members for all three of us. And really the non-voting should follow public safety. So you're the voting member for LIPSIC.
Okay.
So that was, and do you have any other, besides just dates and stuff?
Well, the other one is we called out the surveyor also. I mean, some of it was just some basic Scrivener errors, making some corrections, but with the shifting of a couple of them, that's why we thought it should probably come back before you to amend.
Right. It's safest just to bring it before
Right.
us and make sure
Sure.
everybody's aware of what's
Yeah.
going on. And
So really the highlight is like the chair was saying, the main changes was the soil and water and watershed council and DLCD usually goes with planning.
Okay.
And so,
Is, I'm okay Chair, if there is something that you want to break apart on any of that, just to help your load of first-time chair or anything, just as a, I don't, from the planning department or any of your list, really, I don't mind.
yeah, no, I'm totally fine.
Okay.
I will say, there's a lot of things on here that nobody's seen before that I added from city council meetings. And
Yeah.
so I was already attending all city council
city
meetings.
councils,
Now,
yeah, now
some of those are
we
on
got
you.
half.
So I'm actually doing better far as workload. So no,
Okay.
I'm totally happy with that. I think that pretty much cleans this up, and
Mhm.
hopefully this is the last time we're looking at it for a year.
I think that, I mean, yeah, if you're happy with it, I'm very happy with it.
Okay, and I think Commissioner Starrett, I don't think anything changed on yours because you're still a non-voting for LIPSIC, which it would have said. The only thing that changed for LIPSIC was to change Commissioner King's to voting.
To the voting member, okay.
And I'll need a hand getting in contact with who I need to get in contact with for all of these folks and.
Yeah, I had, so like council meetings, I can probably get
Well,
those
yeah,
forwarded
those
to
are-
you. Those are pretty easy.
I have most of those.
But like LIPSIC, we'll get
Jessica.
Carolina or Jessica to.
Yeah.
Yeah,
get you a
just-
calendar.
Everybody's on that. I think
I have,
you're on that.
yeah,
Let's
I have
invite.
that invite, but just as a touch base of meeting and
I'll put
who you
that
are and who I
on
am.
Director Beach's radar, because Director Beach, her office coordinates LIPSIC.
Okay.
So
And I did update them yesterday at the meeting that
Okay.
you'll be the voting member
thank you.
for that.
Thank you. Yeah, I believe this looks great. I would move approval.
Okay, we have a motion. Any other further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed signify by saying nay. Motion passes. Thank you very much. Now moving on to announcements. Item K, announcements. Commissioner King, you want to kick us off?
Yeah, I had a big week if you want me to to kick off. but,
Bullet points.
Bullet points.
Yeah.
Keep it short.
Well, I had the honor and privilege to take myself to DC to attend the inauguration. Not quite the trip that I thought I was going to get to go on because of the weather, but it was something else to be seen. Lots, very cold, but really, really, really an honor to be there during that time. But also I took the opportunity to reach out to Senator Merkley and Congresswoman Salinas while I was there and got to meet them in their offices, which was, again, just an amazing experience. And only been a few weeks on the job, was not lost. The moment wasn't lost on me, but I had a chance to talk to them about things that we, areas that we need, like a detox center. When I talked with Commissioner Bershauer, that was something that she really wanted to see move forward. And so talked with areas about potentially moving forward with that. And both of them were very interested in helping with that in that arena. We have 4 of the most deadly intersections in Oregon in our district. So again, they perked their ears up a little bit to try to help with ODOT or other entities or even other areas of revenue to help bring that in. And then before I left, I shot Sheriff Elliott an email and said, "Send me your wish list. What do you want?" And so I'm going to send that list over to his staff. But the biggest thing that I did pitch was a radio tower, and Senator Merkley said that he's done several of those and seemed very promising. So I'm hopeful that we can bring that something across the line if you guys are supportive of that. And the last thing that I talked about as well was Councilwoman Yarnell Hollerman was with me as well. We were traveled and together, and just the highway in downtown Newburgh, 99W, is pretty awful, affecting economic development in all of Newburgh. So I let her pitch that one mostly because it's more Newburgh based, but definitely would have my support. So yeah, I'm hoping to get to work on that. Their fiscal year ends in about 30 days. So it's but not impossible to get across the finish line. So I'll get some help from their field reps here pretty quick and those department heads and so on. So yeah, I'm really excited about it though.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Appreciate that. Thank you. Commissioner Stewart?
Yes, we're in close contact with the field reps here,
Yeah.
and they're very acutely aware of our concerns. And regarding the detox center, we have a plan, and we do have funding, and we do have, as a matter of fact, Chair Johnston and I were at the opioid settlement resource network webinar. Actually, it was a meeting where we talked about the allowable uses for some of this opioid settlement money. So we are looking at that as a priority for standing up detox. And so we've got that pretty much, a lot of that is in the pipeline. The local alcohol and drug planning committee meeting was very enlightening. We talked about some of the fine tuning around the deflection program. And also with the sheriff, we talked about a program that we're hoping to roll out in the spring, which is Make a Plan. And that has to do with our focus is to reduce DUIs in Yamhill County because we have a significant number of them. But the sheriff pointed out that there were no DUI arrests on New Year's Eve, and that's because people make a plan. And so they know there's enforcement. And so we're looking at using funding to be able to roll out a pretty robust program to get people to understand that we're going to be out there looking. The other thing is the Affordable Housing Corporation. They are reestablishing their counseling programs and their financial classes, which is helpful for low-income families trying to buy homes. And there are 2 homes that are county foreclosed properties that have been kind of problematic in terms of some of the issues we've had to deal with, but it looks like they're moving ahead on the Ford Street, the Church Street properties, so that we'll get those back on the on the tax rolls. And yeah, a lot going on this week. Oh, and Chair Johnston and I were at the Lafayette Reservoir ribbon cutting, which is, the county had a big part in that. I'll let you talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, that one. So, I think it predates me, but it was ARPA funds. I think about 125,000 went towards that project. It's, pretty phenomenal. The mayor of Lafayette is just an absolute character.
She's
I mean,
wonderful.
so we send those pictures, then she sends me one where she's like, hey, I had an idea. We're going to sell advertising space on the water tower. And I'm like, well, you know, if we're doing that, and she already like superimposed like the Stanley Cup logo on like the water. I'm like, she is just so funny.
She's
Anyway.
great. That's her personal Stanley Cup, she said, the 1 million
Yeah,
gallon
the
Stanley,
million
Stanley Cup.
gallon Stanley Cup. Anyway,
Great idea.
yes, it was a good, cold.
Very cold.
Yeah, definitely got to plan ahead for
I
those.
guarantee you I was colder.
Yeah. Yeah. If you're wrapped up, I'll go through my list.
Go ahead.
Okay. Fair Board met, which was on the list for today's agenda items. So we reappointed Nyberg, Lewis, and Greg Wildhaber. They're three really good members and very active with the fair during fair time. And so that's a great reappointment there. The Parks Board, like I mentioned last week, brought Leslie Anderson. Just a little tidbit on her. That's actually the second time that she's applied.
Yeah.
She applied originally, and then I remember running into her probably a month later, and she just like, hey, I'm still interested. And she came to a couple Parks Board meetings. And so she was definitely engaged even while she wasn't a Parks Board member. So she's going to be a great addition to the parks. On Tuesday, Lafayette had their reservoir. And then me and Commissioner Sterrett were part of it's kind of a pre-planning for the
Yeah.
opioid settlement funds to it's a Stedman Group out of Colorado,
Mhm.
women-owned company that is, it's more of a pitch, I think, from them to hire them to help disperse opioid funds. But I think right now, they're just trying to help us through just showing us what different avenues we can spend the funds on. So it's no cost to us right now, but it's a pitch to us to possibly, I think, hire them on. Now, there will be a second meeting, I think,
Yes, on the 3rd.
on the 3rd.
They were very impressed, and kudos to Director Manfred, very impressed with what we have set up
Mhm.
in this community so far in terms of all the various supports, TTRS homes and all of that. Very impressed, but that is a federal through the state grant to pay for the Stedman Group. So it's not coming out of our pocket, and it's not coming out of, our budget in any way. But they have pretty much been tasked with looking at different ways we could all do it. So fortunately, we don't have to pay for it, but they were super impressed with what we have going on here.
They were, I mean, like first in the nation, some things, as far as communication, when somebody dials the 844 number,
Yeah.
that it actually connects to HHS within minutes or something. It was definitely something that our Health and Human Services has worked on, and it's fantastic.
And YCOM.
And YCOM, yeah, and our sheriffs. It was all just, they were part of that meeting too. Dundee City Council,
Maybe before we get
Oh.
too far, because, the one question I have, because this has come up, I've shared before that right now in the budget, as of the last report I ran, we have about 1.4 million in opioid settlement funds that we've received to date. And at this point, none of the funds have been spent. And it comes up, and I thought it might be a good idea to get a work session on the calendar. I don't know what the timing would be, because I know I get a lot of questions about, what's our plan? We gonna start spending funds, ideas? I know Director Manfred is also prepared and would like to come and talk to the board about some of the ideas that I think we've all been kind of talking about with the detox and different program and areas of needs and where we think there's gaps. And so not knowing the timing for the next meeting, but then also just kind of putting together a plan. It helps inform me when building the budget for next fiscal year, when I start building that budget. Right now, we have everything appropriated, so we have the ability that should the board identify a project or have the funds, we have it fully appropriated. But if we need to work on more of a long-term plan or solidify that, it helps inform me in building that budget going forward. And just kind of want to put a plug out there and see if there's interest in getting a date on the calendar to have a work session or a series of work sessions. I'm not even sure how this is going to look, but yeah.
Yeah, let's wait till after the next sort of meeting we're going to have with the city of McMinnville, because they have, I think, 472,000. I believe they spent 2,000. Since they're not a service provider, we're going to make the assumption that we'll be able to use some of that funding, if not all of it, in collaboration, because they understand the importance of the detox center. So maybe after that, which is February, what is it, the 3rd, we can plan something for the following week, maybe just for initial discussions. And also, yeah, I know that Director Manfred has been in communication with an organization that might actually be a good partner to run this. So
Yeah.
let's wait for maybe a couple of weeks.
Yeah, I'm okay with a couple weeks. One thing that I'll just, I guess, give you a heads up on that I'm gonna want information on, and it may depend on what our moving schedule is for OMI, is what we have for a facility, because that's what's gonna save us a ton of money here. Is if we have something that we're vacating, which I know we've kind of discussed a little bit already.
Right.
So maybe have a little pre-plan on that, and then we'll have that part of the first work session just to kind of kick us off.
And we're also going to need to know what the parameters are legally with whether or not, if we've got somebody who's basically leasing something from us that we own for operation. So we have to look into procurement type of a thing.
Yeah, because I think that's the biggest question, because I know a lot of the conversations, it's really been around a capital investment of some kind of, because it seems like that's what is needed, is the facility. And, so that's why I was just kind of suggesting, because I think there's been individual conversations, but I just want to make sure everybody's fully informed on
Sure.
the ideas.
I would, personal opinion, sooner rather than later on the work session. If there's an opportunity to work with Merkley's office, I would rather jump on that. And I know originally the plan with OMI was to sell all of our buildings, and to help pay for that chunk of money. So if there's a way to work with the office there, again, sooner rather than later, and if Director Manfred can come and help us understand that second meeting before it happens. I understand having a meeting twice is obnoxious, but if we're talking about getting some substantial funding, I think it would behoove us to take that opportunity. So again, sooner rather than later, absolutely for me. I would move anything out of my schedule to make that happen. So cool.
Yeah, we have a chunk of money, and we do have a plan,
yeah.
and we have a facility. And I think right now what we're looking at is sort of the nuts and bolts of the operation of something like that. I think we've all pretty much agreed what we need.
Sure.
So, yeah, I think after that first meeting, that next meeting coming up, we should be able to.
Cool. Okay. Dundee City Council meeting was on Tuesday. I don't have an update there, waiting for some confirmations on some reappointments for a city council position. Tuesday was also Sheridan City Council meeting. They're starting the process to search for a new city manager. Wednesday was Lipsick yesterday. I did, just to build on Commissioner Sterrett's update, I did get some interesting facts from when the sheriff updated us on the deflection program. Since September 1st, when we stood up our program, there's been 94 referrals. 65 of those referrals the individuals were eligible for the deflection program. 13 of them showed up for an assessment at HHS within 14 days. 8 of those are currently engaged in treatment. Now, the interesting fact for me was of the 94, 7 of them are out of state. 8 were Washington County, 5 from Multnomah County, 4 from Marion County, and 2 from Clackamas County. Just kind of an interesting fact. And the reason I bring that up is last year when I did the point in time counts with my wife, there's a spot at the very end of the survey that you could do just kind of a random question. And so we'd put it in the notes, and our one question was, what high school did you graduate from? Just to kind of see if we can, nothing scientific about it, but just see what communities they're from. And it was about 30% of the people that we surveyed were from out of the county. So just, something to think about. And that was the last of my update.
Okay.
If there's nothing further, we'll adjourn this meeting at 10:46.
You.
And here's your pin.